So another topic that I've been meaning to cover is disease transmission. So I'm going to be talking about contact, vehicles, and vectors. So for contact, there's three kind of main ways to classify something as contact transmission. It could be through direct contact, indirect contact, or through droplet transmission. Direct contact is exactly what it sounds like. So it's when a disease is transmitted through direct contact. Now, this could be done through kissing, sexual activity, open wounds like blood, stuff like that. A lot of these contact, transmission diseases are STIs or STDs. Now, not all of them are, to be fair, but majority would be STDs and STIs. There's indirect contact. Indirect contact is when something is transferred via a object or a surface. So think of, your door handles, your railings, contaminated medical equipment, forks, like I said, really just any eating utensil, I suppose. And then droplet transmission is a little bit interesting. So this is where the pathogen is spread through respiratory droplets. So think of sneezing, coughing. To be classified as droplet transmission, it would have to be within 1 meter at which the droplet was expelled, I suppose. So if you sneeze and it's within 1 meter and you were to contaminate somebody, that would be considered droplet transmission. Now, I don't actually know why it's within 1 meter, but this is what is confirmed by the CDC. COVID and influenza are popular kind of viruses that have been transferred through droplet transmission. Contact transmission is overall pretty intuitive when you think about the names themselves. Vehicle transmission is, again, pretty intuitive when we think about the names. Airborne vehicles are viruses that have been suspended in the air for ample amounts of time. They are usually these tiny particles just floating around that can be kicked up through dirt, dust, wind, stuff like that. Other kind of vehicle transmission would be food. So it's exactly what it sounds like. Contaminated food, the food that you eat, may carry pathogens. Salmonella is probably the most popular example of this because salmonella would be on whatever raw, uncooked food that you're eating. You would eat that. You would get salmonella poisoning. E. coli is a good example of this. So again, food, vehicles, air vehicles, very intuitive. Same thing with water. Water would just be contaminated water. The next kind of category are vectors. Now, I've talked about vectors many times. These are different from, plasmids and those type of vectors, but think of vector as a literal vehicle. There's two kind of subcategories to vectors. There's biological and then there's mechanical. Biological vectors are vectors that are carrying the pathogen, virus, parasite, whatever, within their body. The most popular example of this is malaria. Mosquitoes would be the vectors in this scenario. When they land, they bite us, they will deliver the parasite, malaria, into our body. Same things with ticks. Those carry Lyme disease, so when they bite us, they will infect us with Lyme's disease. So there are a lot of biological kind of organisms out there carrying these diseases. The difference between, and I haven't talked about this, but the difference between, per se, an animal reservoir or a human reservoir opposed to a biological vector is that a animal reservoir would be something, a place in which it is a natural habitat, or it's almost a natural habitat for a virus. So lots of animals like dogs, bats, whatever, they carry rabies. They don't really show symptoms necessarily of rabies. So to them, it's kind of a normal occurrence within their body. But say we got bit by bats or we got bit by dogs, that would, obviously, we would show symptoms of that. Those aren't biological vectors. Malaria, for example, like I mentioned earlier, malaria is not the mosquitoes, or the mosquito is not malaria's natural kind of habitat, or it's not naturally growing or sustaining life inside of mosquitoes. That is a parasite that the mosquito picked up and then transferred to another person. So animal reservoirs, human reservoirs, those are not considered vectors necessarily, although it is easy to confuse them. The next kind of vector are mechanical vectors. So biological vectors is when the parasite, disease, virus, whatever, is inside of the vector itself. Mechanical vectors are when it sits outside of the vector. So when flies land on fecal matter and then they go and land on your food, they're transmitting whatever kind of bacteria, disease, etc., that they picked up on the fecal matter, and then they delivered it to your food. So they are not carrying it within their body, they're carrying it on their body, if that makes any sense.